Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome to another way too early season preview for the Texas Longhorns upcoming 2024 season. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, joined by fellow lifetime Longhorn CJ Vogel. What's going on, CJ? How you doing, brother?
Good. We're 1 week closer to the season. We're talking about a big opponent here, Rod. This should be a fun breakdown.
Yeah, no doubt. Talking about these Oklahoma Sooners. A lot of people doubting the Sooners this season, and I understand why. Longhorn fans, I think we all are a little, we're a little hesitant to be doubting the Sooners because that's a rival. But a lot of reasons the Sooners have to, they have to take their game to the next level, not only heading to the SEC. We know that. They're replacing their entire offensive line. They're replacing their offensive coordinator, replacing their defensive coordinator. They're replacing their quarterback as well. You can make the argument there's no team really in the country that's dealing with as much turnover, whether you're talking about top to bottom overall in key positions, coordinators, quarterback, O-line, than the Oklahoma Sooners are dealing with right now. So Brent Venables, tall task on his hands. He's got Zach Alley, who he hired as the defensive coordinator. He comes from Jacksonville State. He was a staffer under Venables when he was at Clemson. So he trusts him in that regard. And on offense, also another trusted name, Seth Luttrell, is going to take over the offensive coordinator and play calling duties there. But we know Jeff Levy had that offense rolling. They were one of the top 10 best offenses in the country. If you're looking at total offense, highest scoring offense for the Sooners since 2019. That offense was no doubt with Dillon Gabriel. It was lethal. Longhorn fans got a taste of that. What are your thoughts about what the Oklahoma Sooners are replacing this upcoming season? Because it's quite a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot, right? You know, anytime you go into a season, you have a brand new quarterback, you have a brand new offense coordinator, brand new defensive coordinator. I know Venables is the guy, calling defense. It's his defense, but at the same time, defense coordinator, important piece. On top of that, you have a brand new offensive line. It's a lot of pieces to replace. I look back a year ago to that Alabama game, Rod, and what kind of inspired some of that confidence? Well, it was the new faces that were in the program. It was a first-time starting quarterback. It was a brand new offensive scheme, and it's just a lot of turnover. And I know that there's going to be familiarity and similarities from what we saw in 2023 to 2024 with Oklahoma, right? Seth Luttrell, Jeff Levy, they run the same similar kind of offense. You have your defensive guru, if you will, with Brent Venables. So there won't be a completely new look, just a lot of turnover, new faces, new communication, new keys to pick up on for the Sooners in game when it comes to adjustments, game planning, and execution, obviously, on the field.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I'm glad. I think we can start on the offensive side of the ball with Seth Luttrell because you're right. There is a commonality philosophically, conceptually with the scheme that Seth Luttrell is going to run and with the scheme that Jeff Levy ran. But you're replacing a lot of pieces. Let's start with Jackson Arnold, the quarterback. And Jackson Arnold, although, he's a 5-star coming in, so extremely high upside. His first start was in the bowl game. By the way, little nice nugget. When Texas plays against Jackson Arnold, at least they'll have Johnny Nanson's blueprint because Johnny Nanson actually was defensive coordinator at Arizona, and they played Arizona in the bowl game. They lost that game, and Johnny Nanson forced a young Jackson Arnold to be a mistake-prone Jackson Arnold. Really, right. He turned the ball over 4 times, actually, 3 interceptions, and it was a fumble. So 4 of the 6 turnovers they had in that game, he was responsible for that Arizona defense. Sidebar, really opportunistic, but completed 57% of his passes in the game. He did have 361 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, but there was a high risk, high reward, I think, performance from Jackson Arnold. That was the only start overall. He had, I think, 63% completion percentage on the season, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, saw time, but didn't get his first start until Dillon Gabriel was no longer in that role as a starting quarterback. I'll say this, and by the way, Casey Thompson, former lifetime Longhorn Casey Thompson, he's also the backup there. So if Jackson Arnold does disappoint, they do have Casey Thompson there. But I will say I watched some film on. I went back and watched as much as I could, the very little sample size there was to watch of Jackson Arnold. I love his delivery. It's efficient. He's got a real quick release. He does tend to stare down some receivers. That's probably just a young quarterback thing. He does seem to stare down some receivers. So he telegraphed some of those throws, probably where those interceptions came from. He's not a dual threat quarterback, but he's a capable runner, in my opinion. But he's a quarterback. If he can throw on time in rhythm, that's when he's at his best, and he shows that anticipatory ability as a quarterback. So he's got a really high upside. That Seth Luttrell system they're going to be running it's going to be a quarterback friendly system. So they'll tailor it around his strengths. And he's got, and you pointed this out several times, I know you really like that receiving core. He's going to have some weapons around him to throw the football to in the receiving core. The issue will be is the offensive line and the running game going to find its way and be able to help support a young quarterback. Because if they don't have that, that's where Jackson Arnold may end up struggling. I do think the biggest determining factor for him is going to be the O-line, the run game, because I do think the passing game actually may take care of itself with the weapons he has on the outside if he has some support to balance the offense.
Yeah, 100%. And again, you look at Seth Luttrell's offense at North Texas a year ago and what Lebby did with Dylan Gabriel in 2023. Very similar numbers, right? Very similar schemes, very similar concepts. But the numbers, Rod, they stand out to me. They're very, very close to one another. Points per game, Oklahoma 41.7. They were the third highest scoring offense in the country. Of course, early games against Tulsa, a late game against TCU, they were able to put up close to 70 points, on these teams. North Texas, 33.5. That was good for 19th. So, hey, they score a lot of points too. Yards per game, 507 for Oklahoma. That was third best. 493 for North Texas. That was fifth best. 2 top 5 offensive schemes in terms of just moving the ball. Oklahoma better in the red zone. They cashed in on more opportunities with the better talent. Plays per game. Both teams were top 10. 79.3 for North Texas, 76.2 for Oklahoma. North Texas off the field on third downs was kind of the reason why you saw them get to where they wanted to be on the field. Couldn't convert. Oklahoma was a top 5 team on third down efficiency a year ago, just a tick under 50%. But plays and the amount of plays and how quickly they got to the line of scrimmage, another one of those big concepts and those schemes that they have that stand out very much to me. Both teams were top 15. North Texas actually a full second faster than Oklahoma.
Wow.
They were snapping the ball every 22 seconds. Oklahoma snapping every 23. North Texas was a top 10 in a year ago in terms of getting to the line and kind of the pace that they play at. So teams have to be aware of that. Whenever you game plan for Oklahoma, whether it be Lincoln Riley or Jeff Lebby a year ago, that's one of those things. You don't have a lot of time to look over to the sideline and get that kind of check, if you will. Now, luckily, Rod, you get it through the headset. So you'll have a little bit more instant communication, so you can keep your eyes on the line of scrimmage while still receiving the call that you need for the play coming up. And again, they'll be going quick. I'll be eager to see what kind of changes they do use with the helmet communications on both sides of the ball, regardless. To the wide receivers, Rod, and I want to go over this because the yards per reception, you talk about it, we talk about it. The concept that Jeff Lebby likes to do is just huck the ball deep, go fast, get vertical. Seth Luttrell, very much the same thing. And this yard per reception tally that I'm about to bring up for the 5 wide receivers that OU will kind of cycle through a little bit this year, very impressive. Nick Anderson on 38 receptions a year ago, 21.0 yards per reception. Very impressive. Jaden Gibson, didn't hear a lot about him, only 14 receptions, 375 yards. However, 5 of those were for touchdowns, 26.8 yards per reception. Andrew Anthony, towards ACL the week leading up to Texas, 27 receptions, 15.9. Jalil Farooq stepped in for Andrew Anthony, 15.4. And, of course, Deion Burks in a completely different offense over with Hudson Card in Purdue. He's now over with Oklahoma. He was at 13.4, but he's a guy that they're very excited about to kind of filter in right now. So that's a lot of big playability. Of course, will they have the offensive line? Will they have the running game to offset that? We'll see. But at the same time, they like to go fast. They like to air the ball out. They got plenty of weapons to do just that.
And I'll add, because I just, when we start doing these previews, I start to cyber stalk some Sooners websites and Sooner fans. They're really excited about Jaquez Petaway. Yeah. You probably know a lot about him from the recruiting ranks. I mean, he's young. I think he was a freshman last year. But apparently there's a lot of buzz that he could be one of those guys stretching the field, be an explosive playmaker. And you're right. Didn't Texas also recruit Deion Burks? The Purdue, was there some buzz that he was of interest to Texas as well?
There was buzz, and then you saw Nick Saban retire, and all of a sudden, Isaiah Bond becomes available. And
Yeah.
so Texas, it was seen as a loss at the time. Yeah. Isaiah Bond might have been seen by folks up north as a consolation, but I think Texas is very happy with what they got in Isaiah Bond there.
Deion Burks also, how about this one? Second in the Big Ten in forced missed tackles and on receptions. He had 18 forced missed tackles.
He can wiggle.
Yeah, he's a guy that's got, he's a little twitchy. And so it does kind of fit those receivers you were talking about if Seth Luttrell wants to keep up that verticality, which I think he will within that passing game. Also, remember Jake Roberts, the tight end from Baylor, also transferred in there. I know he's not a wide receiver, but he's talking about the passing game overall. I think he's a guy that can make a difference. But let's talk about the offensive line, because you're right, man. The wide receiving core is impressive. I mean, that group, we didn't even get it. Nick Anderson had, 10 touchdowns last season receiving? Only A.D. Mitchell had more receiving touchdowns than Nick Anderson in the Big 12 last year. So I'm with you. I think that group right there, that's a little scary. The hope is that if you're Texas, you ain't even really got to deal with the wide receivers if they can pass protect because they don't have the offensive line. And that is the question. They did get a really good center, one of the best centers in the country via the transfer portal. Actually out of SMU, Branson Hickman is his name. Actually had a 80-plus Pro Football Focus grade as a run blocker and a pass blocker. Only center in the Power 5 to be able to claim that. He's legit. That's a great play. Redshirt junior, great place to start. And other than that, I've seen some names, Jacob Sexton and I believe Jake Taylor projected to be the tackles for them. They via the transfer portal. It's like the entire interior offensive line for them may be via the transfer portal. Garion Hatchett out of Washington. Febici, I'm sure going to mess this name up. Noawu out of North Texas. They're really high on those guys they brought in. Potentially they'll compete for the interior offensive line spots. And those other guys coming in are tackles. But, they're replacing every piece on that starting offensive line. Continuity and communication is a really, really big in terms of working as an overall unit on the O-line. I just wonder how long it's going to take them to gel. Will they have gelled by the time they play Texas is the real question.
That is the big question. Of course, Troy Everett was another name that they were very excited about in the spring. He went down with a knee injury, a leg injury. The expectation is by the end of fall camp, he should be back on the field at some capacity. But how does he kind of factor in as well? Because last year wasn't necessarily a Bill Beatonball offensive line, right? He's one of the best offensive line developers, kind of, guys that can get an entire unit going together when you see what they've done in the past. Cody Ford, Creed Humphrey, some of these big names, Trent Williams. Right now, I don't think this offensive line has that in them at this moment. Could they down the road, midway through the season? Potentially. I don't see it right now with the bodies that they have in the room at the moment. But hey, that's not to say that they won't be a formidable opponent. I just don't see a Tyler Guyton-esque transfer coming in as they had a year ago who went first round in the NFL draft. And this also kind of bodes to why I'm a little skeptical about this offense and the fit that it has with Jeff Lebby. You don't see that complementary offense to defensive fashion that we've seen with Steve Sarkisian. Sark likes to go fast. He likes to air the ball out, but you see that running game kind of tick off some of those seconds and those minutes from game clocks every now and then. Here's when Oklahoma started the second half a year ago against Texas. They went down the field, 13 plays, 75 yards. They scored a touchdown. They go up by 10. And here's where the frustration stems from Oklahoma fans with this kind of offense that Lebby and now Luttrell are going to implement. Next 4 possessions, Rod. 3 and out, 2 yards, you take off a minute and a half. You're up by 10 in the Cotton Bowl to your biggest rival, right? Start bleeding some clock. You're midway through the third. You're going into the fourth. A minute off the clock, you go 3 and out, you punt. Next possession, you get a first down, you gain 27 yards. 5 and out, you turn over on downs. You take off 59 seconds. Okay? Next series after that, you miss a field goal. 10 plays, 72 yards. So you drive the field a little bit. Miss field goal. 3 minutes. You're not taking off any clock here, right? Despite moving the ball, despite flipping field position, that clock remains the same. Next drive after that, three plays, 4 yards. Minute 21, you're punting the ball again. So all in all, 4 possessions, you're up by 10 points. Takes off no more than 7.5 minutes. Texas has plenty of opportunities to go down the field and score it. They don't, obviously. And we saw what happened on the last possession, but that same kind of offensive philosophy gets OU in trouble time and time again because they don't take time off the field, and that defense has to sit out there for 85, 90 plays. And at the end of the day, we've seen it on the Texas side of things. It just gets exhausting for those guys.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, CJ. And I always wonder, Sark does it situationally, right? He does use tempo, but it's not always tempo. It's not constant with those types of offenses you're talking about, especially that veer and shoot from Jeff Lebby. It is a base principle, a foundational principle to apply pressure on the defense with the pace, and it works. But you're right, it doesn't necessarily help complementary football. It doesn't help the other phases of the game. You definitely potentially can leave your defense exposed. But and we'll get to the defense here in a second. Certain coaches, they adapt defensively to that style because they basically assume, all right, based on the offensive philosophy and based on, the tempo, we're going to score more points. If we're going to score more points, then maybe on defense, I need to be a little bit more opportunistic. I can take more chances on defense because I'm going to get worn out and exposed regardless because I'm out there, like you said, for 75, 80 plays. I'm out there so long, I'm going to get beat. But if I'm going to get beat, I might as well gamble and roll the dice and risk a little bit more. And that way I can win a little bit more than I lose. And when I do win, I'll win big. A takeaway, a negative play, something like that. That Oklahoma State was famous for that back in the day with Mike Gundy and his offenses. But getting back to the offense before we jump to defense here, the running game, because I think it's going to be important that offensive line gels, the running game, if it supports Jackson Arnold, I think the passing game could end up being pretty lethal. Gavin Sawchuk is who everybody's really excited about there. He's the running back. Last year averaged over 6 yards per rush, 744 yards rushing. He looks like he's going to be the featured back for them. They'll have some other guys, but he looks like he's going to be a pretty good player. So he's not even the issue because I think he's got some dynamic ability. It's going to be the offensive line and how quickly they can gel and become adequate, capable run blocking offensive line. So I think the offense really, truly, I think it is going to revolve around how quickly the offensive line gels. If they gel quickly, that offense actually can, I'm not saying going to pick up where they left off last year, but I think it won't be that much of a drop off. Yeah, but if they don't gel, CJ, I think this offense could struggle. They really could. Just getting the ball downfield and then a young quarterback having to run for his life a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And again, fortunately for Oklahoma, they'll have 3 games early on in the season where they'll be able to get that right. Tulane, I believe they play Temple and Houston as well. Tennessee precedes Texas as well. So they'll have plenty of opportunity to put their best foot forward. It is a tough schedule for the Sooners this year, but to your point, they should be able to put up some points, and they should be, again, a formidable test once more for the Texas Longhorns in Dallas.
Let's jump to the defensive side of the ball because a lot of people believe this is a strength of the Sooners this year, and not on the line of scrimmage. Once again, it sucks that your line of scrimmage for the Oklahoma Sooners, that's your biggest question marks, and yet you're going into a line of scrimmage league. But their back 7 is where they shine. Remember last year they had 20 interceptions as a defense. They made a lot of plays on the ball. I believe they were tied for 3rd nationally in takeaways. So really opportunistic, kind of getting back to what we said. If you're going to be exposed by the offense and that pace, the up tempo, and they're going to leave you out to dry in terms of having to defend a lot of plays, you need to make a lot of plays and force a lot of takeaways. That's what that defense did last year. The back 7, that's where I think the strength is. Danny Stutzman is a stud. He's an All-American. Had 19 tackles for loss or no gain last year. That was 4th in the Power 5 among linebackers, 37 run stops. He's legit. Guy's going to end up playing in the league. Also, Billy Bowman, another All-American in that back 7 for them. One of the nation's best safeties. 6 interceptions last season. That was tied for 3rd most in college football. But I like the corners, actually. Woody Washington's 7 PBUs last season. That led the team. Another cornerback, Gentry Willis, a good player, had 3 interceptions for them. And the other linebacker, Kip Lewis, is actually a really good player opposite of Danny Stutzman. I just really like the back 7. I mean, they got 3 players potentially back there that could be all-conference, all-American caliber players potentially.
Yeah, definitely. 1.5 interceptions per game. You mentioned it. That led all of college football a year ago. They're very opportunistic, as you said. Very talented safeties, right? Billy Bowman, we've talked about him. Peyton Bowen. So they got a Denton a Denton County duo going in that secondary. Both of them very talented. I know Texas fans like to talk about Billy Bowman and the Bijan play with the stiff arm. He's a very good player. He's very talented. 2 of those interceptions, I believe, actually turned into pick sixes. So he can go with the ball in his hands a little bit. Obviously, at one point committed to Texas before flipping over. But at the same point, I love their linebackers. I think Danny Stutzman's very talented. Who's next to him? Is it Jaron Kanak? Is it Kip Lewis? How does Deshaun McCulloch kind of figure into this at that cheetah position for the Sooners? It's a big question mark because, again, I think that there was some meat left on the bone a year ago with that group. And specifically, Rod, as you go down towards the defensive line, this is where the questions kind of figure in because it looks a little bit to me like what we expected a year ago from Texas on the defensive line, and they just didn't get it, right? They expected that edge room to be very talented. It was not. Ethan Downs, they brought him to Dallas for Big 12 Media Days, 4.5 sacks. He led your team. Trace Ford gets him over from Oklahoma State. Was not the impact guy that you expected after being in Mike Gundy's system the year prior. PJ Adebawore, a 5-star guy out of high school, wasn't much of a factor. Taylor Wine, another guy that they like. When you look at these guys, Rod, they look tremendous. All of them 6'5", very lengthy. They just didn't have the year that you expected them to have in this system. The other question I have is, do they have enough beef on the inside, right? They go out, they had a big win with Dominic Williams, the interior defensive lineman, over Texas, over LSU, a couple others. He's a big piece. No denying that. Freshman All-American, all Big 12 honoree a year ago. Big piece. Do you have someone next to him that can help kind of be that bridge, right? To have that duo on the interior. Right now, it's Dejon Terry that they're hoping is that guy. Jaden Jackson, a freshman out of IMG Academy, another talented piece. Rod, I think they only have 2 guys over 300 pounds on that interior defensive line.
Wow.
It's not a lot. They don't have a lot of beef there. They got talented players. Grayson Holton, we'll see how big he is for them. But again, I just don't know at this point. Again, it's July 12th when we're filming this. It'll come out on Sunday, obviously. I don't know if they'll have that beef that you'd like to see from an SEC interior defensive line.
That's a great point, man. That's a nice nugget about the 300 pounds going. And you're going into the SEC, a line, right. It's a league that's all about beef, a line of scrimmage league, and the biggest questions with this program right now are the lines of scrimmage, the interior
front line guys on the D line. They're good, but again, as the game progresses and you start seeing those second and third lines guys come in, we'll see.
Yeah, I like Trace Ford, though. That was a nice pickup. Trace Ford, who's been at Oklahoma State, seems like forever. So we're talking about Trace Ford, and now he's at Oklahoma. They also got another defensive end via the transfer portal. I think Landon Woolard, I believe is his name, out of Miami. Some people are excited about him at 13 sacks over a 2-year period there. But I'm with you. I think that's if you're a Sooner fan, or if you're looking at this program right now, this lines of scrimmage and the depth on the lines of scrimmage, because even if you got the frontline guys on the offensive line that you trust via the transfer portal, injuries happen on the offensive line. You want to have a steady rotation of 7 guys or so, and I'm not sure they necessarily have that right now with the Sooners. So good stuff there. I think ultimately for the Longhorns, anytime there's a rivalry game, you got to be thinking that anything could happen in a rivalry game, but the amount of turnover at critical, crucial positions at coordinator, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, quarterback, the entire offensive line. I do think that the Longhorns have a significant advantage. Texas is one of the 4 teams in the country that return head coach, OC, DC, strength and conditioning coach, a multiple-year starting quarterback as well. And yet we're talking about the Sooners having as much turnover at the top as any team in the country. So I actually feel as confident as one can going into a game against your rival, Oklahoma. You don't see Oklahoma usually this vulnerable. They're just not, even though coming off a 10-win season, probably 10-3, and I think Venables has done a better job. I'm higher on Venables than most Longhorn fans are. But that's a lot of turnover. That's a lot of uncertainty. I think they're going to win more again. I think they're projected to be 7.5, 8 wins, somewhere around there.
It's a tough schedule.
It is a tough schedule. I think they actually can meet that mark. I have more faith in the Sooners than that, but I do feel good about the Longhorns' chances versus Sooners, considering how much stability and continuity the Longhorns have compared to the Sooners this season.
Yeah, I'm with you, Rod. I think that Texas is deeper. They have more depth. Again, I think they were deeper and had more depth a year ago, and you saw how that game went, right? The big key, and we've talked about it, they're very opportunistic when it comes to taking the football away. That said, there's still room that you can kind of get them. You can kind of pull a double move. You can kind of, still see the explosivity. I got 2 more stats for you here. They were 77th last year in explosive pass rate allowed. What does that mean? Plays over 15 or 20 yards. How often does that occur? Well, 14.66%. It's not nothing. They were, kind of below that middle of the pack right there. They were 59th in yards per play allowed as well at 5.5. So, hey, there's still room for them to maybe bite a little bit too much. We talked about this with Jahdae Barron. Maybe the eyes kind of, I don't want to say lead you astray, but you get too antsy. You want to make the big play, and all of a sudden a double move turns into a big play, whatever it might be. That's Oklahoma's entire defensive secondary. So we'll see if that comes back to bite them. We'll see how that complementary play kind of works for them in terms of how quick that offense goes versus how much rest does that defense get. So they have big playability on both sides. We'll just see how they work complementary.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. I think the defense will improve. I think you may have a slight drop off on the offensive side of things, but we'll see how the complementary football comes together for the Sooners. All right, good stuff there, CJ, as always. Appreciate the knowledge and all of the tidbits. Thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate you guys watching and listening to another way too early preview and breakdown of the Longhorns' upcoming 2024 season. Join us next week when we're breaking down the next opponent for the Texas Longhorns. Until next time, hook 'em horns.